Hello and welcome to TFT North American Regional Finals and World Qualifiers. Final Day 3, Game 2.
Game number 2, we are at the NA Regional Finals for Monsters Attack. 3 players will be securing a spot at the set championships here. And Dan, we have one of my least favorite opening carousels. Belt, 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 tier, 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 and some gloves.
Yeah, it's some people's least favorite. I actually really like this one because it forces you to play differently than just, auto select like sword or bow or rod, like the traditional offensive items that a lot of people really like. Not to mention you don't have the traditional defensive items. So I appreciate that it nudges you into a different direction. It does become a little bit difficult if it's, say for example, there's 3 tiers out and all of a sudden there's 3 people also kind of chasing the same tree. But I think there's a really interesting challenge in that respect. I think some people don't like glove, and rightfully so. It does feel like a lot of the glove components can feel awkward. And now that more people are playing Last Whisper or playing more Morgana than ever before, it feels like Last Whisper is also not even necessarily that important. So I can understand the sentiment between glove feeling pretty bad right now.
I do want to specify that it's one of my least favorite to play. When I watch it, I'm with the same mindset that you are, which is just, this is very unusual openings for a lot of the players. I do like when players are having to be pushed outside of their boundary and come up with different ideas. It's just when I'm in this spot, I'm like, oh no, what am I gonna do? I always just feel so, it's like apprehensive. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just a weird feeling that I get with this one.
Oh yeah, your voice isn't really deep as if you're having some existential midlife crisis, which I can get, man. You've been in the game for quite some time, but it's just TFT, man. It's not that deep.
I think you could be right, but I'm on boat with you on that one. Gold augment to open with things, and replay coming off of a first place, and frankly, quite a ridiculous first place as well. Like, how often do you get to level 9 and you're like slow rolling for a 3-star 4 cost?
Yeah, I think it's something that replay is pretty comfortable in. He did take Cybernetic uplink, which is leaning more towards AP. I am curious how comfortable he feels in AP tree, as replay has been specializing more in the AD tree. And he's been a player that's been capping his board a lot. He's been going to level 9 50% of his games, and I think that's also been some of the reasons why he even bought 2'd in a couple of tournament games, because he was trying really hard to play for a max cap situation, which is often what AD needs to do. AP compositions can get it done with a lot of the 4 costs. AD really needs the power of overwhelming brute force, which is oftentimes what legendaries provide.
I mean, lock it early on here. And look at what Malala's got going on. Sell some of the board. Blue buff. Metabolic. 10 gold. I'm getting an idea here from Malala's side.
Yep. Going for Lulu reroll with hearts and supers. Now, replay decided to slam a locket, which is pretty interesting. Seems like he's very tempo focused. Wants to try and get that win streak. Locket is also not that bad of an item if you want to play into Ox4 Spellslingers. And it is an item that you can play as a one of on one champion and get cybernetic value without worrying about investing further and having to feel like you need 3 items on a frontliner like Annie. So I'm curious what Jukyu is going to be doing, but we'll check in with him later as we take a look at the breakout performer of this tournament. By far, the most impressive player so far has been Jukyu, and he's done it from a couple of different angles, but he also is playing a lot of AD. And I noticed the thing about Jukyu that stands out to me is that he just tends to play the things that are less contested. He's willing to just go off the beaten path and figure out himself, as long as of course he's not losing to Aurelion Soul at the end of stage 4. There's a moment yesterday we watched where he accidentally played too weak of a board to prep his Warwicks, and he lost and didn't get the anvil. As long as we can avoid those moments, he's pretty much been solid all the way through the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, that's definitely the kind of moment you want to avoid in that one. But, that's a really good question to bring up in playstyle, especially when you're finding yourself in a top 8 position in a tournament as difficult as this one is. If someone's going off the beaten path and playing things that are uncontested, you are trading a lot of capacity just simply for consistency at that point. When you're able to make that work a lot, it has to make you think, how important is consistency versus just raw power that you can get on the board.
All right, well, the raw power of the board that Setsuko's looking for has not resulted in 2 wins, but he did win his second fight, so maybe he can put together a good streak. The thing about Setsuko's spot is that I know Setsuko wants to lean around the very solid 4 cost, but the Spell Slingers really were doing great until the prismatic came about and was not able to actually put together something meaningful. I'm curious if Setsuko also wants to go into gadgetines. He does have an extra Annie, and if he goes for, you know, Annie 3, hits Gnar, gets the gadgetines online, there might be a possibility for Setsuko to just lean into a really high cap board, because I think that 6th place, while it wasn't the worst result compared to Malala and Ripple Overdrive, does set him pretty far back in terms of standings to start things off.
Yeah, still 5 games to go on this one, so you know you got to keep your head up and look for some strong finishes in this one. And I think that's really what's going to be on the radar here. This is going to be another loss, though, so back and forth on the fights. Pre-level into 5 as well, so you know, still 10 gold in the bank, double item off the carousel here. This is one of those spots where I feel like for Setsuko, it's at what point do you commit to kind of going one way or the other, or are you still going to, you know, kind of try to consistently conserve some of your HP while also not spending a ton of your gold? I feel like Setsuko is going to operate a lot better when he's got a lot of resources in the bank. I feel like if he doesn't have a ton of resources in the bank, how are you going to find those first place finishes, those second place finishes? Something that Setsuko has consistently been good at. When you look at the top 4 rate that Setsuko has held this tournament, it is massive. It feels like there's just been a couple of bottom 4s peppered into the entire tournament so far.
Yeah, all throughout the set, honestly. It's not even just the tournament. He's been super consistent. Ripple Overdrive, a player that we talked about. One of my picks to go through today ends up with a rough start, but now you can kind of see a little bit of why the gadgetine line is something to be encouraged. It's very, very good. 2 players were angling for it. Ripple Overdrive and Deepe had a prankster to start things off, so that adds a lot of the color of why maybe Setsuko shouldn't be leaning into that. Instead, Setsuko is going for a stage 2-5 underground start because he found a Samira.
Wow.
And that is a position of comfort, but also not exactly what you usually see. 2-5 is often considered too late for underground. You might get a few people who say, that might be the latest I'm willing to take it, but how far will he actually go for this cash out?
Yeah, that is, I think, the big question about this. I'd say that from what I've typically heard from players when I hear them talking about advice, or when I've spoken with them personally while playing through a game, is that 2-5 is about the latest they're willing to go. Afterwards, just it's not considered worth it. You're going to get more value at simply putting together a strong streak on one way or the other, either losing very softly or just continuing to win in a row. So I will be curious to see where that goes. I think that maybe Samira is one of the biggest influences to it because it can be a key unit in a lot of situations. Talking about the gadgetine line, you know, one of the big things that's here is that an Ancient Archives has showed up for Ripple Overdrive spot, and they found a gadgetine emblem. I feel like that's got to be easily one of the biggest incentives you can have for it. But now we're battling for a 5 streak here from Replay's side. This locket has so far shown that it is worth a ton right now, and this is a 1-star board we're talking about.
Yeah, and he actually had a pretty interesting decision of whether or not he wanted to put the Sunfire Cape onto the Morgana or the Rel. It might seem a little bit weird. Morgana is more of a range unit. Why would you put her with Sunfire Cape? But remember, any damage activated via Morgana activates her passive of Sundering and Shredding. So that does include Sunfire Cape. A lot of people look at Static Shift, for example, maybe even Runa's Hurricane, but don't forget, some of these weirder items like Bramble Vest and Sunfire Cape can also get it done. That being said, all is well in replay land. This guy is a beast. And now he hits an Annie 2. It looks like he's in firm control of this game to slingshot his way into that AP tree, as he does have that Jewel Gauntlet slam. Let's see how far he can take the streak.
Honestly, this was such a heads-up call on a lot of this spot, too. I don't think that gadgetine was like the main intent here for replay. It's really more of a placeholder, I think, to activate cybernetic uplink value. You have items spread across 3 units. Your locket value is spreading across your entire board. Like, this is just a really strong stage 2 from replay's side, where you have a lot of 1-star units who are getting the job done. Like, that's just, it's pretty uncommon, I'd say, to see a 5 streak from that.
Yeah, and I think it's just to go to show you that he really understands how to capitalize off tempo. Plus, some convenient players in the pool want to lose streak like Malala and Robovan. Hits a Rel too. My goodness, that's got to be a strong case to either level and play this unit, or even replace the Morgana. Perhaps he can even do both. He could level to 6 if he assumes that it's worth it. He's going to go down to 20 gold if he does that. But if there's any players that could challenge him, he's considering it. Deepe, Ripple Overdrive, and Malala are back in the pool, though. That's not a really strong case. Malala, we know, is lose streaking until he finds Lulu 3 online. And Ripple and DPay do not have strong boards on paper. Malala is the player that is on the other side. This is excellent recognition by Ripple Overdrive. I think so many players would just autopilot and level to 6 for no reason, but now by scouting around and seeing that there's a really strong chance that he keeps him to a player that's weaker into him, he doesn't need to go for that.
A lot of damage gets picked off. You still got a lot on board. The Lulu having damage that can splash across here is really the most dangerous thing. It's just a matter of whether or not you have the time. And oh my goodness, is this going to be the time? Ah, there we go. Pantheon falls. Yeah, and the units are too far spread apart. Wow. It is really close, and honestly, stuff like that makes me nervous, but that's the exact kind of situation that Replay is looking for. It's how to capitalize in those exact spots.
Okay, so we have a couple of options here. So I was going to say that he could roll for another anti-augment and play around it. This is also one of those really unusual spots where you can think about alternative carries if you want to go for, say, a 3 cost. But I think Burning Spirit is too reliable, given that he already has Anti 2, and he already has this Jewel Gauntlet and the Shiv Slam. If he only had Shiv Slam, or perhaps only Jewel Gauntlet and had a floating tier, he could have considered something like Power Grid. But this makes a little bit too much sense to me. Very, very solid choice. In the meantime, looking at some other players, Ripple Overdrive, who was going for that early Gadgeteen, has hit a Gnar 2 and now is in the pool, which means Ripple replays Win Streak is on borrowed time. He's not actually going to beat some comps like Ripple Overdrive's board, so he's going to try to hope that he doesn't match into him.
Yeah, maximize it. If you're going to lose, lose by the least you can, and if you're going to win, do it by spending the least amount that you can as well. I don't imagine you're looking to punish players right now. You're looking to reward yourself as much as you can, and this was a pretty big boost, I'd say, off Burning Spirit here. And again, the item spread here is good. You've got 2-star on a 2 damage item carry at this point. Continues the streak at this point, and my gosh, Replay is in such a fantastic spot in this game. You're coming off of first place as well. I'm having a tough time imagining the start of this tournament going better for you right now.
That's right. You can look around and seeing like Kindle Gem playing what looked like to be Hacker LeBlanc with Azonias. Very intrigued if he ends up leaning into that or it's a temporary item holder. We'll find out more. Speaking of more, Sasuke wants way more out of his heist, his underground, as he's skipping his first one. Taking a look at some of the hero augments, the most interesting choice is Ripple Overdrive going for an Alistar, which means that Ripple Overdrive may have messed up his hero tailoring, because you are looking for Gnar 100% of the time, and the fact that he got a Alistar augment meant that he tailored his hero augments to allow Alistar to be in the pool, and that is a pretty significant mistake. If so, I didn't see the spot, so I can't confirm 100%, but if my instinct is clear, I think that might be something that sabotaged Ripple down the line to prevent him from going for that top 1. He's still in a pretty good spot with that Gnar 2 though.
Yeah, I will say that is one of the biggest things that I was looking at here too, is that there's actually very few 3-cost hero augments that got taken from this. We're seeing DPay on a Gnar support with this one. It started out with a Prankster Crest at the beginning of this one. We're seeing Robovan facing off against Setsuko right now, who's on the carry augment from Vex in that spot. And then, of course, the Alistar. Big standout to me in my head. This is very rarely taken, and when I see it taken, honestly, it hasn't really performed super well on top of that. But every single one of these augments does have a chance to win in some regard. The question is how they win and when they win. Maybe you can turn that into something that doesn't end up feeling like a disaster at the end of the day. And then across the item spread too, it feels like players have been slamming items pretty aggressively on this, having strong direction on where they want to go. And nothing here feels like it's cobbled together on the items. Everything feels like it's pretty deliberate in how players want to use this. And still, we're seeing 2 players at the top of this one. Replay still in the streak. DPay is starting to put together a streak. Juke, you just found a 2-star Garen.
Wow, Jukyu, insane spot for him to be hit and guaranteed this early. Looking at Malala, Lulu 3 is online, as well as a couple of other 3-stars, so he's looking really strong. In the meantime, Ripple Overdrive's position does not look very good. He actually picks, I believe this is Stubborn, which is the Magic Shred variation of Alistar, which is not a bad effect. It's just not particularly super impressive. And also the fact that he's playing things like Morgana, which she already does inherently provide that through her passive, feels way worse. So Ripple Overdrive spot, kind of go back to what we said. This is a reason why when you're playing the Gadgeteen line, it's highly recommended against including units like Alistar or Oxforce in your 3-1 board, because of the possibility of exactly what happened to Ripple.
Yeah, it's just not synergizing well with what your team's trying to do, and especially not right now. Maybe at some point you get to cut Morgana from your team, but it's kind of tough in my opinion to cut Morgana from your team. This is one of the strongest units that you have in the game, especially sitting at a 3-cost spot. It's not difficult to find and get on your board with some sort of benefit. So this Alistar augment really feels more to me like it's an Alistar augment.
It's just
gives
an
you an
Alistar.
Alistar. Yeah.
Yeah. More than
DP
anything, I agree with that.
on the 5 streak here, levels to 7, a little bit unconventional of a spot, but if you're trying to keep together a 5 streak going into Wolves on stage 3, this is something you're going to have to do at times. It's these unconventional spots, I think, that really spell out a lot of player strengths. It's unusual you find yourself in these situations, but when you do, you have to make the most of them.
Man, DP really is the second coming of Robin Soggs, isn't he? At least early Robin Soggs, who was rolling way too hard in certain spots, never going to 9, seeming to play for like a top 4 placement. DP is taking that, but he's kind of making it his own because he is so willing to roll even farther than other players, and he's still losing despite all of that investment. I understand why he rolled to 0. He really wanted to beat replay going into it, but that streak has now ended, and DP could be free falling down the standings.
It's a heartbreaking loss to take at that spot. But
Okay.
honestly, if that's the loss you're going to take, I kind of respect the willingness to contest replay on this one. If you're kind of playing almost like for the sake of the lobby in the tournament as well. You're like, someone's got to beat this guy, or he's just going to run away with this. Like if replay can put together back-to-back first place, we have 1 spot left in the tournament that we could grab. So you're going to have to take some of those risks at times. I don't know if it's the right risk to take, but hats off to it for the amount of courage it takes to do something like that. We'll see if he can just put something back together here. That was 0 gold going into Wolves. And so now the question is, how can you do the most out of this? For replay, I imagine that it's going to be evaluating the spot. How much do you need to spend versus have you done enough? And now you can coast for a bit and take advantage of the resources you've accumulated. I'll be curious to see which direction they take that. We're seeing a big supers board being put together from Malala in the bottom left. And meanwhile, everyone rolling for this one. Kindle Gem trying to decide whether or not you want to free up that Zonia's or whether you want to use it here and right now. Pantheon 3 found from Malala as well. This is, oh my gosh, this is not the time to queue into this board.
No, this is just when Malala continued to spike. Although Malala's still not at full power, but if he can get a 3rd item, and heaven forbid he finds another gold hero augment in the form of Axiom Arc, that this might be lights out for the rest of the lobby. Malala also has metabolic accelerating, meaning that all that HP that he traded early isn't actually going to be that big of a deal. If he can put together like a stage, a win streak, he'll be right back in the middle of things. And Kindle Gem looks, quite frankly, pretty lost on his roll down. He rolled halfway of his gold, found Kaisa, 5 Kaisas, has the Shiv and the Zonias, but he's pretty far away from setting up a good Kaisa board. And it is a gold tier augment. And so now I have to wonder for Kindle Gem, what does he actually want? If he wants to stretch to include this Kaisa 3 possibility, I'm starting to think that maybe Ancient Archives might be something he considers, because maybe he can go into something else, but none of those options are pretty appealing. And these aren't particularly strong either. He's going for Axiom Arc. He finds his 2nd Mordekaiser on 7. I'm just going to let this guy cook, man. I feel like he can go in so many different directions. Is he going to actually lead into this Kaisa 3? The lady that led him down this path was Kaisa, but he is going to abandon the path. No longer going to actually lean into this Kaisa beyond level 7, if he can survive past level 7.
Yeah, this is looking kind of rough right now. Axiom Arc, I would not say, is a big highlight for what's happening here. Setsuko, meanwhile, finds a 2nd win. Big boost to the front line in this one. Relying a lot on Belveth to get through this stage, but honestly, that is a great way to rely on this stage right now. Belveth 2 with a strong front line. Sign me up.
All right. Well, Kindle Gem, that admin helps gain maximum HP at the start of each fight. Probably hoping to have scaled this board, but I think this is a product of Kindle Gem thinking about the possibility around playing Hacker LeBlanc and did not get that, and now is pivoting out, and as a result, he just basically doesn't have the good sides of anything. He was not able to capitalize off LeBlanc tempo. He's not able to actually follow through and pivot out and go into Spell Slingers. Kindle Gem is just going 8th, and it doesn't feel like there's anything you can do to stop it at the moment. I think he's already made his bed.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those spots where kind of everything might have been falling apart at that point. You just don't have a clear direction, and it's tough to figure out what direction to go from there. Setsuko's board, meanwhile, this is just fantastic right now. You have a pile of gold. You've had good HP conservation. You have very clear direction in this. Like, this is a great spot for Setsuko to come back from last game.
No Gadget Team +1s for either of the Gadget Team players. I missed very briefly what Malala got. Looks like Malala got a makeshift armor 2, which is pretty solid. If he's able to have these 3-star units get extra HP. Setsuko trying to see if he can get past a lot of the big HP from the mascots of Robovan. We didn't talk about it last time he was on screen, but he did take Joy Siphon, which is a throwback to what we saw at the very beginning of 8.5 glitched out. We saw a ton of this composition roll everything over because of the healing, and you can start to see why Setsuko is just repeatedly attacking the same targets over and over without actually making meaningful progress and damage, and that is what Mascots tries to achieve, winning through the battle of attrition. And Robovan Kenobi, the man who takes the path of least resistance, once again is streaking and showing you why he is a threat in any lobby, because he's willing to play these unconventional lines.
Yeah, honestly, it's a great standout explanation for what exactly Mascots is trying to do. If you don't have scaling damage throughout the fight and you can't burst down champions right away, Mascots win. And that's why it's such an important distinction to make. Those spots where something like Rage Blade can make a difference. Not a strong item, but if the fight goes forever, suddenly looking fantastic against a team like that. You're both going to stand up for a long time, and eventually your damage has a possibility to take over. It's really something that I feel like Robovan does a lot in lobbies, is trying to get a read of what other players are doing as well. Not only just taking lines that are uncontested, but also putting together teams that can fight against what the rest of the lobby is doing. So Replay here, I am loving this spot that Replay is in as well. This is a lot of Ox Force you have on the front line. You have a second win to back this up. You have plenty of items to work with at this point, and now you're starting to get a little bit of a trade out. So upgrading the damage here feels like what Replay wants to be focused on. But right now, when you're queuing into Malala at this point, Malala, I think, has the strongest hand.
Yeah, Malala is a player who looks like I think he took a loss, but still is very strong. And now he has JG onto his Lulu. His augments are actually not as insane as it could be. So yes, he's got the right components of it, but he actually lacks a lot of the augment power that really makes this pop. So that's really good for Replay, because he's going to lose this fight, but he's not going to lose that fight by that many units, which is a huge thing, because this Lulu, sometimes when she gets rolling with that Axiom arc and she just keeps chain healing with Gunblade, she wins by 4 to 6 units and you're not able to kill anything. And so Replay takes a pretty good loss. The bad news is that Replay is very far away. Not a single Twist of Fate. He was playing Gadgetines and deep into stage 4. It's because he doesn't have an alternative. His best item holder is a Lux 2 and a Sona 1. That is not a good spot there for Replay.
Gonna take some time to get going. Robovan, meanwhile, wants to find themselves in a top 4 spot from this one. Did take a loss in the last round. But again, the question is how tough are those losses that you're taking? Also, you still have some preparation that can benefit from this board. That's going to take a little bit of calculation as well.
Oh, geez. I mean, we do have Morello for Replay for that, but it's not going to help much against the mascots. Yeah, it provides some anti-heal, but remember, you need damage to follow the Morello to actually kill those units. Otherwise, they will still heal just at a reduced rate. And it looks like not only is Robovan winning, but he's also not losing any units. That Nasus 2 has been drawing aggressions at the beginning of the fight and is just out healing Viego and Sona's damage. And it does not matter what Replay can do here. He's just going to take a massive loss. Holy smokes. That's almost as much as you get. Only Alistar and Nasus dropped that fight.
Yeah, that is... When 1 or 2 units die in stage 4, that's a big hit, and that's not the ones you want to be facing at the moment. Over on Juke U's side, this is a win they've put together, but a pile of gold in the bank right now. The items are looking pretty good here as well, but this is a lot of offensive components. But I feel like this is a spot where you could really make something of this. Salvage Bin, I feel like I'm sorry, that's not Salvage Bin, is it?
It is Salvage Bin.
It is Salvage Bin. I feel like this is one of the augments we've seen players get lost with the most, or make mistakes in a round, or have something tough to do. This is always one I have my eye out on, where its order of operations means so much when you come down to a spot like this. You have to be quick. You're going to have so many decisions to make. You don't want to leave a bunch of orbs in the middle if you get teleported to another board for a fight. So you have to be quick and you have to be decisive.
And speaking of quick, he wants to quickly get 2-star units. His front line is pretty insane. He has, the 2-star mech, and he has 2-star Shen to kind of support that for defender. His back line is 1-star Belveth, and hoping that mana tempering could be good enough. This is really good call out that mana tempering works well with Belveth, because Belveth casts really often. She's actually pretty good as a low mana cost activator. So if you had admin, for example, on ability cast, it's quite good. Redemption probably going to be the item of choice in the front line, but what does he do with the rest? Is he going to make Thieves Gloves? He already has Last Whisper, so he doesn't really need that. He's got a ton of AD items. Thieves Gloves is the weapon of choice, but he still has either a Runins or a Bloodthirster or a Giant Slayer available, but no actual units to hold it. And GQ is going to suffer from the same problem as Replay. Fantastic front line, pretty good setup, but if it doesn't have enough DPS, he's just going to struggle. This Rammus is actually immortal somehow. Belveth has locked onto a couple of units in the back line. And because of that, Robovan was the player who lacked damage, getting stuck on the mech. Everyone's front line is actually pretty cracked. It's just that it feels like everyone else is lacking the damage. Finally, we look at someone's board who might be having damage, and it looks like it's Ripple Overdrive with that Gadgeting TF to help supplement that Gnar.
This is the tier, belt, glove, carousel's fault. No wonder I struggle with this. I don't know how to get any damage together.
You're actually right. People are just lacking sharp offensive items. So it does feel like I think that's a pretty good spot on analysis because of the starting components. It's been really awkward for everybody this game.
Kindlegem's on a win streak, by the way, sitting at 15 HP, and we're in stage 5 right now. This is pretty uncommon that you don't see a player like genuinely in danger when you get to spots like that. We've seen players knocked out before Wolves. We have a chance to see all 8 players alive here going into stage 5 carousel.
Yeah, I usually see a little bit of drop off. We could potentially see if Ripple takes a pretty big loss to Fade ramping up. Time to duel indeed. Replay though, getting the kill on the Nunu, which is his backline access, has to go to the front door. Does end up getting a kill and looks like she'll be able to clean it up unless the Twister finishes it off. Very close fight. Malala takes a pretty big loss. So does Deepe. All of a sudden, Kindlegem making me eat my words. Paisanos once again proving everyone wrong. And you can start to see a little bit of what's happening. Malala, 1.5 stage later, still had not actually meaningfully improved his board state. He went to 7 and still was playing the exact same board for almost an entire stage. Not to mention, we also said that Malala's augments are actually not even that good for Lulu. And this is the drawback of it. I think Malala was hoping to hit that Axiom Mark, hit that Battle Mage, hit something that would be really good. And so far, it has not paid off. Let's see if he can go toe-to-toe with Ripple Overdrive.
It's one of the matchups I feel like I like if I'm in Malala's spot right now. It's not a pile of damage that's coming through, so you have time to build up the Lulu and make the most of it. I feel like when Lulu gets collapsed on, that's when you're going to struggle the most right now, but nothing is getting collapsed on right now, and that's happening. These Lulu hits are going to start to build up and become more and more powerful. The Nunu's cranking a lot of damage through on this one right now, but it is in the wrong place at the wrong time at this point. Maybe this next hit could drive something. Pretty massive damage coming through. Lulu right on the cusp of this, but TF has to go one direction right now. Kindlegem and Deepe fall out in 8th and 7th place. Wow.
Honestly, that's kind of a good 7th from Kindlegem relative to the position that he put himself in. I think the fact that he was 30-something HP behind and found a way to climb out of 8th was great. The spot that he got himself into was not ideal, but that's the thing about TFT. Sometimes you just take the wrong early game line commitments, and you just have to make the best of it. And I think Kindlegem would be he should be happy in the moment about the 7th. Obviously, he's not happy about going bot 2.
It's just tough. That's the chaotic nature of these situations. Is sometimes it's just not going to go your way sometimes, and when that happens, you have to make the most of it. It's tough to be finding yourselves in these spots right now, but that is the nature of it right now. Take your 7th and look forward to the next 4 games. Setsuko, meanwhile, on a win streak, sitting at 50 HP. Ripple Overdrive on the cusp of finding themselves in a bottom 4. But it's a pretty cascading scale on the way down. It's not like a canyon between the top and the bottom at this point.
Yep. Going up against Juke Yu here for Robovan. He's still stuck on Vex 2, and I think the struggles of Robovan in the late game here shows you exactly why people have gravitated away from Vex. There's a reason why it's not that popular, because she can struggle, especially in these situations where there's a super tank and Vex gets stuck. Conveniently, all these units are lining up for Vex to be able to snipe the back line. So Robovan doesn't lose by much, but he has to stop losing. Drops to 4th place in HP. Ripple Overdrive, another bot 4 finish. A terrible start for a person that was touted to be one of the strongest players going into the field. We'll see if he's able to bring that back, as I just don't think that situation where he was not able to get the Gnar hero augment, I think that sabotaged his entire game, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was definitely a big hit. Ripple Overdrive has definitely been playing a heavy 1st or 8th style, and the tougher the field gets, the tougher it's going to be to capitalize on those. There's just no question about that. Not the way to start the day when you're hunting down a top 2 finish after 6 games, though. So Robovan here, you just talked about how Robovan needs to start putting together some wins in these rounds. I don't think that this is the type of round where he's going to have super strength against this. He's already getting collapsed on.
Yeah, this is the kind of matchup that counters Robovan, which is another unit that scales. Mascot tries to outscale you through healing by having more mascots die and then ramping up over time. And that's exactly what Malala's composition does, and it actually ends up potentially favoring it. It kind of depends on whose super tank cracks first, the Rammus versus the Pantheon. And it looks like it's a battle of a very stoppable force meets a very movable object. Like, what is happening? Can we just get some DPS on the board, please?
Wow. Robovan has cut this loss tremendously.
Whew. Man, I feel like both of these players are going to struggle to do better than 4th place. It feels like neither board is able to really get consistent damage, and Robovan does not have the unkillable Rammus 3. Trying to get some prep stacks onto his units, but if he can get Vex 3, maybe we can get there. He is only 1 off.
All right, well, this creep round is going to be big. I feel like there are still some game-changing things that can come out of this creep round as well. This is one of the things that I've liked the most about this set, is that it used to feel like that creep rounds were just another item. And since there's been variation introduced, you can see some pretty wacky stuff happen coming into some of these rounds. This is, it's an Orn Anvil.
Oh, that's right. Orn Anvil could theoretically be insane if you get Anima Visage in a mascot situation. Randuin's incredible pickup, and he takes the Vex 3 as well. Robovan able to get the most important thing online in his composition with the Vex 3. Here's the caveat. He knows there's a possibility of a hook, so he has to position accordingly and has to make sure to still get the Riftwalker value. You can see the calculus going on his head. How do I best do this? Is there a way I can stop it? But his Vex is also exposed on the right side. Uh-oh, if he gets hooked, it could be all over. Zephyr!
It's still pretty tough, but you know what? It's not out of the water just yet. So, a lot of this is going to rely on Jhin trying to apply some of this damage in the corner to supplement what Vex is doing, but this front line is starting to crack. Pyke's going to shut down some of the damage in the back right, but there's a little bit more damage coming through with that Janna right now. The Mana Zane's going to result in faster casts. Some of these are going to need to be crits from this Vex cast. These are not getting it done right now, and this front line's about to crack. Robovan is going to have to take down these units if this is going to survive through right now. This region doesn't look like it's stopping through. TF is drawing the cards right now. Everything falls. Robovan is going out in 5th place. Malala hangs on with 1 health. Thank you, Metabolic Accelerator. Top 4 secured for Malala.
Really tough spot there for Robovan. You could argue that the Zephyr may have potentially given a swing to that fight, at least maybe to kill another unit, but Malala ended up being +3. Every unit is 2 HP, so Robovan would basically have to win that fight, because I think only 3 units survived on the other side. Great top 4 from Malala, all things considering, because I just don't think his augments were that good, quite frankly. Lulu with no pedestrian augments is actually quite balanced, contrary to what your average Redditor may make you think.
Setsuko here with 5 Renegade. This is the player I feel like I've seen 5 Renegade most frequently appear on the board from. And the positioning here is looking pretty good as well. It's going to be a matter of whether or not this damage can chew things down. The scoped weapons on the side of Jukyu giving Bel'Veth that extra range. A lot of utility on the board as well. Garen's still holding up. It's the 2nd cast we've seen now from Garen. And Bel'Veth exposed. That's bad news. Here we go. The damage is coming through. Bel'Veth, too powerful for that one. Setsuko going to take a small loss on that one. Replay taking a loss. Jukyu, player who's standing out so far in the rounds. What's Setsuko hunting down here?
He needs to hit Urgot 2. He needs to play legendaries. The 5 Renegade would be if he gets the Leona +1 in, so it's probably going to be unlikely at this point. I actually really like the double Urgot because he's trying to win through combo damage, which is not actually something you see very often, but essentially the way Setsuko's trying to line up his board is to basically have a timing attack of everything landing. Rammus casts, and then the Urgot's casts, and then the Morgana casts, and it just has a bunch of chain CC. And hopefully we'll see him get that damage in from Setsuko. But replay, another good money Zephyr. We'll see whether or not the Rammus can continue to stall out. Rammus casts again. Big second win. So many units survive. And I think that might be enough. Oh no, Twisted Face locked onto the Jin. The front line is cracked. Oh, and Setsuko takes another loss. Replay, able to get another big dub. And this lobby is heating up. I don't know who's going to win it. Renegade Emblem.
Oh. You said it had to be a
my
+1. The +1
God.
has showed up.
Look,
I'm just saying. Setsuko tweeted at the start of this tournament, or at the start of this day, that he was making it to Worlds right now. I'm not surprised by this Renegade Emblem showing up.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he still needs to hit 2-star units. If he can hit 2-star Leona, 2-star Urgot, Setsuko can win this game. If he doesn't, he's going to have to make do with 1-stars and hope that his positioning can be good enough to get there. Right now, the name of the game for Juke Yu, I like this actually, putting the Zeeks onto the Wukong, recognizing that's a unit that positionally does not matter because it's sacrificed. Will Juke Yu be able to get the edge or replay through things like the hook, making sure this front line doesn't get manipulated here, because if he gets wrapped upon, this could be dangerous.
You know, this is a big one. Aaron's backing up a lot of the damage on the left side now. Replay has a second wind online. The Zephyr, pretty big news because the backline's already been accessed at this point. Garen is going to have to hold up, and we're going to need the Bel'Veth to stand up. It can't do it. Everything on Juke Yu's side of the board has been destroyed. It wasn't even close on this one. My gosh.
Juke Yu barely survives in second place, and Setsuko did not look like he was able to tag his 2-star legendaries. A pretty solid third, but I'm pretty sure Setsuko himself knows how he could have won that game. In the meantime, Juke Yu also got a very fortunate set of outcomes on his Thieves Gloves with the RFC plus the Deathblade. No such luck this round, and he's got to be cleaner about his positioning. He knows what replay is fishing for. So now, how does replay react? Does he go for the same target, or does he mix it up? We're about to find out, because this is going to be the last fight of the game no matter what.
Second fiddle comes into play. Look at the Janna positioning. Wow.
Oh, he gets it.
Does it land in time, though? Oh, it lands in time, so it picks up a lot of the weight because of the second fiddle there absorbing some of this damage. Bel'Veth isn't getting destroyed at the start of the fight. However, most of the damage has gone down at this point. Garen is going down fast after this. A little bit of breakthrough from this Bel'Veth, but there's just not much to dance around with here.